Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a monthly wrap-up video. This is going to, just like a few of the others in the past, it's going to be going over 2 different months, so this video is going to be going over September and October, and I do think that for the rest of the year I'm going to do one more video, which is going to be in November and December, so hopefully that's okay with you guys. But basically in these I'm going to be going over my stats for each of the months, as well as some herb garden picks, which are just some smaller card games I wanted to feature, as well as my top 5 for the month. Like I said in the last video, I am going to be starting to feature more games that I've already talked about in the past and just games that I've played already, which in these videos before I would typically only consider my new to me games in my top games, so it would be like top new to me games instead of just overall the top games that I've played within that month. So you guys will recognize some of the games that I will be talking about in my top 5s for each of these months, because some of them are some classics, some of them are games that I've talked about before, and I just want to continue to express my love for these games and really show you guys how often I am playing these ones that I have talked about before and that you may know and already love as well. So yes, that's going to be today's video. Hopefully you guys are excited. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also, hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. And without further ado, let's get into this September and October monthly wrap-up, shall we? Alright, so getting into the board game stats for the month of September, which I always say, but this is the app that I use for my board game stats. It's just called BG Stats. But for September, I had a total of 27 plays. 24 of those were different plays, so I did play a few games multiple times. 11 of those were new to me games. So you guys can see there that I have been playing a good balance of new to me games, but also a lot of games that I've already played in the past. And then as for BGA, I had a total of 21 plays on BGA. And I do want to start mentioning my top plays on BGA, because I think that is very helpful as well. But I had a total of, for my top 2 plays on BGA, I had 4 plays of Castles of Burgundy, which obviously my favorite game of all time right now. Love that game. So 4 plays of Castles of Burgundy, and then I also played Tapestry 3 times, and then I think the third one was Bunny Kingdom, which I've been playing a lot of Bunny Kingdom with a few people over there on BGA, and it's been a lot of fun. I've actually really been enjoying Bunny Kingdom, and I have never played it in person, but I would love to eventually play it in person. It is a closed drafting game, which I have really enjoyed, with a little bit of control of different parts of a map, which is something that I don't typically like. But I feel like the theme and the closed drafting along with that really makes it something that I do enjoy. So yes, I'd be interested to see if I would enjoy it in person as well, but those are some games that I've been playing on BGA for September. So moving on to some herb garden picks for the month of September. All 3 of these games, fun fact, were played at one board game convention called Tabs, and it was just a one-day convention, and I played a lot of really good small games that I really enjoyed. So the first one that I wanted to mention is a game called Typeset, which is a word game, but also a little bit of a, not so much a roll and write, but maybe a flip and write in a way, because you're flipping over a tile, one of the letters in the alphabet, and everyone is having to, you have your own little book, which it's kind of fun because each player gets to choose a different font. And as someone that has done a lot of graphic design and stuff, fonts are some of my favorite things, and I just love fonts and discovering new fonts and stuff like that. But yes, each player gets a book, and you're going to flip over a tile, which is going to be a letter, and then you're going to be writing that letter into the first slot of a word, and you're going to then be spelling out different words that eventually will unlock different things, and you're going to be crossing out different things on the right side, kind of giving it the feel of a flip and write / roll and write. And it is a little bit of a push your luck kind of game as well, because if you go into the following round, and each round I think you're flipping over 5 letters, and if you're unable to use all 5 of those letters, then you kind of bust. But you're spelling out these different words on the right side of the page. You're going to be able to cross out different vowels that you're going to be adding into those words. You're going to be able to chain things to then add additional letters of your choices to those words. And then eventually by the end of the game, once everyone has decided to pass, you're going to count up the victory points that you've gotten for all of the words that you have spelt out, and then whoever has the most victory points would win. And this is such a fun spelling game. This is one that I'd love to get my hands on because my family specifically loves word games, especially my mom. She loves word games. So I think this would be one that my family would really enjoy. Francis also really enjoys word games, so I think this would be one that he would enjoy as well. And it's just a really cool, different feeling word game that I have never experienced before, so I wanted to mention that one, which is Typeset. Moving on to the next game, I do believe that this is from the same publisher as Typeset, which is DV Games, I believe. It could be DV Games or it could be something similar to that. There's two publishers that I always get confused, but yes, it might be DVC Games. But all of their games are in the same kind of box, and the game that I wanted to mention is another game from them, and it's called Scream Park. This is another one that I would love to get my hands on. I am crossing my fingers that they are at PAX Unplugged because I would really love to get my hands on some of their games. But Scream Park is one that you can play solo, which is really exciting. I'm not sure if you can play Typeset solo. I'm assuming not. But yeah, Scream Park you can play solo, and basically you are building up a tableau of these cards that are going to need specific icons, and it is, I do believe, if I remember correctly, it is a closed drafting game, so you're going to be drafting, I think you're picking 2 cards from your hand and then placing it into your tableau and then giving the rest to the player to your left or your right, and you're going to be building up these different rooms in a haunted house that eventually different people are going to be walking through, and you're going to be able to kind of set off different effects as they walk through your room and getting victory points as they walk through each of those rooms. And like I said, each of these rooms are going to require different icons to kind of count, and there's also going to be different objectives that you're going for. There's like a personal objective that you're going for, and different things that you personally you'll get victory points for and the other players will not get victory points for, and just all of the different rooms and the things that you are, basically it's a multi-use card game as well, so each card is either going to be able to be used as the room, or it's going to be able to be used as a characteristic for a room that you tuck it under, and that's also going to add the icons that you're going to be needing for that room as well. And just the combinations of rooms and the adjectives for that room and just the additional things that are added, I guess they're not really adjectives, but different things that are going to be added or effects that are going to be added to that room. I think it's just so fun to see the combinations of just crazy rooms that end up being added into your haunted house. So yeah, this is one that I would love. I love the art style of this as well. It's very sketchy and creepy, and it's black and white and super cool. And like I said, I would love to get this into my collection because it is a spooky game that can be played solo, which is awesome. And it has 2 of some of my favorite mechanisms, which is closed drafting and tableau building. So yes, that is Scream Park. And then moving on to the last game that I wanted to mention. This is one that I received, and I was so excited to receive this game. It is so cute. It is a game called Oishi Food Stall Clash. I believe that's the full name for it, but I will just call it Oishi. And this game has the cutest art, hands down, I have ever seen in a game. It is so wonderful. I do believe that it is illustrated by the same person that designed it, and she, I believe, is a illustrator, but then also decided to design a game. And it is just the cutest little, again, tableau building contract fulfillment game where you're going to have a hand of food cards. There's going to be a bunch of different categories of different food dishes, and obviously you own a food stall and you are trying to get the most customers to come to your food stall, and you're going to be serving dishes and kind of meals to these different adorable customers, which I am just absolutely obsessed with. But basically each customer, you're going to have a line of customers in the center of the table, and then they're going to want specific things. And on your turn, you can do a bunch of different actions. You can gain more cards into your hand. You can play out cards, which you can either play out a single card or you can play out kind of a connection of cards, because each card is going to have the type, and then each card is going to have the type that you can play connected to it additionally for free when you play. So you can kind of play an entire connection of cards in front of you if you are able to get those specific foods in order to create those chains. But yeah, just such a cute game. I'm so happy that I own it. It is from a indie publisher designer, so it is one that, you know, is probably harder to get, but I do know that sometimes this game is available at Game Market West, which is a little market event that goes on, I believe, 2 or 3 times a year that I've chatted about briefly before. But that is in, I believe, in California, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, such a wonderful game. I do recommend if you ever see it, or if it's something that you can get your hands on, I definitely recommend it because it was very, very cute. All right, so moving into my top 5 games for the month of September, starting with number 5, which is the last Azul that I had to play in the full series, and that is Azul Stained Glass of Sintra. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And great news, I really enjoyed it as well. I think I just love the general gameplay of all Azuls. It is so hard for me to look at all 4 of them and be like, this one is better than this one, because all of them really just scratch the same itch for me. I do think that a lot of people say that the original one is the best just because it is the most simplistic and really just the roots of Azul, which is absolutely correct. I really enjoy the original, but I do really love the additional kind of small changes that each of the different games in the collection make. All 4 of them do something completely different, and I really enjoy each of them for the individual things. But for the Stained Glass of Sintra specifically, I really enjoyed the columns and the fact that you have to kind of pay attention to what row your little top piece is in, because you can never place anything in a column that you've already passed with your tracker at the top. So if the tracker is in the far left spot, you can place on any of those spots, but whenever you place into one of those rows, your top token is going to move to that row. So you're really paying attention to kind of where you're placing things, because if you ever get to the far right, you can't place anything until you take a turn to kind of reset, taking your token and placing it to the far left so that you can start placing things again in your columns, which I think is so cool and really makes the timing in the second one super important, because you have to pay attention to where that token is, because you might have to take one of those pass turns at the worst time ever, because ultimately you are taking a turn to just not take anything. So it's allowing the other players to take things from the central kind of drafting area, just like all of the other Azul games. So yeah, really interesting, because there might be something in the center that you really, really want, but if you don't time it correctly and then you have to take a pass, it's more likely that then another player is going to take something that you want from that central pool. So yes, Stained Glass of Sintra, Azul, absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed it. That is why Azul Stained Glass of Sintra is my number 5. Moving into number 4, this is a game that I was anticipating so much, and that is a game called T-Witches. I really enjoyed this one. I was excited to play it ever since I got it. I got the most wonderful little PR package for this one from the op, and I also in that got a personalized art print of me and Penny, and I was like a witch from Sandara Tang, which was just absolutely crazy and amazing. So huge shout out to them. But overall, I was really anticipating T-Witches, and looking at the gameplay and just the vibes of it, I knew I was going to enjoy it somewhat. I have also already played it. I played like one full round of it at PAX Unplugged last year, and I really enjoyed it. So once I was able to play a full game, I really got a feel of how the game plays. I do think it's my favorite of the games that are all illustrated by Sandara. So There's Tea Witches, Critter Kitchen, as well as Flamecraft. I think overall with those, my order would be I enjoy Tea Witches the most, then Critter Kitchen, then Flamecraft. Then again, I haven't played Flamecraft for a really long time, and I do want to get it back to the table because I do remember enjoying it, but I do remember it being somewhat simple in a way, and that's why I think that Tea Witches really hits that great spot for me, because it does add more complexity to it. There's a lot going on in this game, and I do think everything in Tea Witches really does go well together, and just overall it ends up being a really fun experience. Basically, you are running a tea stall and you are brewing different teas in order to serve these different witches. And you're going to start off the game with a little bit of a push your luck element, which I will admit that this isn't a part of the game that I absolutely love. It's kind of just a, it's okay. I don't really typically love push your luck, so this kind of phase of the game is just like a quick little thing for me. It doesn't really stand out too much. But once you're finished with that, basically you're going to flip over cards and you're going to decide when to stop. The cards are going to be your customers. If you end up flipping over 2 of the same customer type, you end up busting, and then you have to get rid of some of your customers, and then the ones that are protected by the hexes stay, but then everybody else gets discarded. And then also each of these different cards are going to have different abilities. There's going to be some cards that flip over which are your familiars that are just going to give you stuff and not count as a witch for that push your luck element. But yeah, you're going to be flipping over cards until you decide to pass or you bust. And then you'll go into the worker placement part of the game, which is personally my favorite part of the game, which you have your teapups. You're going to have 3 different teapups. You start with 2, but then you get a 3rd one in, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd round of 4. And you're going to be placing out those teapups in order to do a certain amount of actions depending on where you place it. You're either going to be able to do actions, which is turning the fountain in the center or taking tea from the center, and then you're also going to be able to gain different toppings, which you're going to have to give with a specific tea in order to serve a customer. And then based off of whatever section you place your teapup in, that's going to give you another main action that you're going to be able to perform based off of the location. So each of the locations is going to have a different thing that you're going to be able to do. You're going to buy new tiles for your tea stall. You're going to be able to serve a celebrity. You're going to be able to get these different like potion cards that are going to give you special one-time abilities. There's a bunch of different things, like I said, and I love this part of the game. My only thing is I feel like there's this specific thing with whatever tea you have in your teapup that is going to be able to be used for all of your witches. It's kind of like a permanent tea type that you have at all times that you can use multiple times for multiple witches. This is a part that I did find because I did teach this game. It was something about the game with that kind of permanent tea that you have multiple copies of, if you will. That part of the game really does kind of take a bit to fully grasp. The people that I was playing with, and also myself, often forgot that we had access to that tea that was in our teapup, and it's just something that like is not super intuitive, and is something that I feel like over time playing this game more and more, it will start to become intuitive with the game. But when you're first starting to play this game, it's often very hard to remember that you have your tea in your stall that you can use one time, but then all of the tea that you have in your teapups on the board are teas that you can use to serve customers over and over again. So if I had a green tea in one of my teapups, I could use that green tea to serve to multiple witches. Hopefully that makes sense. Overall, I really enjoyed Tea Witches, and that is why it is my number 4 for September. All right, moving into number 3. This is a game that I just recently got my own copy of, and this is a game that does have a solo mode that I am very excited to try out, and that is a game called Saltfjord, which I have played this once before. I played it in, I think it was June or July, when I went to Edmonton to visit Kovre, Tyler, and Ilya, and this game is so good, and it just goes well and vibes well with just how my brain thinks and just itches my brain in the best way possible. And overall, I just love the way that it plays. It is a dice drafting, dice worker placement game in a way, where you're basically on your turn drafting a die from the pool and then placing it to kind of trigger everything on your board in either a column or a row. You do have two different colored dice, so there are the orange and the clear. If I remember correctly, I think you have to draft two of the orange ones always, and then the rest of them have to be the white ones. But it also might depend on the round that you're in, because I do remember that some get added each round. But anyways, you're going to be placing them. The orange ones are going to trigger the rows. The clear ones are going to trigger the columns. It could be vice versa. But I love that part of the game with choosing the different die and then kind of triggering whatever row and column you want. You also, during the game, will be adding more tiles into this grid of tiles in order to make those rows and columns better. So again, very much like some of my favorite games, Wayfarers of the South Tigris, Darwin's Journey, you're kind of creating the rows and columns to be better, to kind of follow your strategy, which I really, really love. Additionally, with this game, there's a bunch of different tracks that you're going to be going up, and dependent on those tracks, and if you're able to get to the top, those are going to allow you to score different objectives at the end of the game. You're also going to be going up this river where you're collecting different fish and stuff. You're going to be fishing and then adding it to your boat to get stuff. And then you're also fulfilling these contracts that get added to the side of your board that are going to allow you to do different things at the end of each round. And overall, everything in this game just goes so well together. I love the way that it plays, and that is why it is my number 3 for September. Moving on to number 2, this is going to be a quick one because I've talked about this game a ton on the channel, and that is the White Castle, specifically with the matcha expansion, which I have loved. And just the more and more that I play the White Castle, the more and more I love it. And it's starting to get to the point where it is one of those games that I just love to play, to try out new strategies and to like master the game in a way. It's just starting to get to that point, and I just love the game so much. I've only played this game once solo and I didn't have a great experience with it, so I am more so talking about this for multiplayer. I just love this game multiplayer, and I do need to give it another chance solo, like I've always said since playing it that one time. But yeah, the White Castle is fantastic. And again, much like Saltfjord, it is a dice drafting game, a dice worker placement game. You're drafting a die from a bridge, you're placing it onto a worker placement spot in order to do some sort of action at all of these different locations. And then ultimately you're trying to kind of chain different actions as much as possible, because you only get, I think it's 9 to 12 turns in a game. I think dependent on player count, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I've talked about the White Castle a ton here on the channel, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But just know, fantastic game, and that is why it is my number 2. All right, finally, moving on to my number 1 for the month of September. And this is a game that the more and more that I play it, the more I am just becoming obsessed with it. Such a fantastic game. It just recently won a very prestigious award, but the game that I'm talking about is Endeavor Deep Sea. Oh my goodness. This game, I need to get my hands on a copy of this one because I really enjoy it. And much like the White Castle, the more that I play this game, the more that I just fall in love with it. And that's when you know that it is a fantastic game. When, you know, typically with games, you start out really liking it, and then sometimes with more plays, your enjoyment kind of goes down. But if you can find a game where the enjoyment goes up as you play it, that is a really good sign. And Endeavor Deep Sea has done that for me. I have played this time and time again with friends. My friend Kat also really enjoys this game, and we've played it so many times, and it is such a fantastic game, and I understand why it won that award, which the award that I'm talking about is the Spiel des Jahres, which I don't know how to pronounce it properly, so apologies. But it won that, and it full on deserves it because it is such a fantastic game. It's the type of game that the general gameplay is fairly simple, but the strategy and like just the depth of play with this one is just so good, and I cannot get enough of it, and it is why I really want to get myself a copy of this one, because you can also play it solo, and I've heard good things about the solo mode. But yes, that is why Endeavor Deep Sea is my number one for September. All right, so moving into October and the board game stats for October, I had a total of 22 plays for October, so a little bit less than September. I played 17 different games, so not a ton of different games, but it was still a great month of gaming, I will say. I had a total of 10 new to me games, and then for BGA, I played a total of 19 games, and my top games for October on BGA was, again, Castles of Burgundy. I played Castles of Burgundy 6 times in October, and then I also played Hadrian's Wall 2 times in October. Those were my top 2, and then I think my third was just a 1 play, but it was Ark Nova, which I really enjoy Ark Nova. But we will be talking about another Ark Nova game in this video. But anyways, those were the stats for October. Moving into my herb garden picks for the month of October, I will say that one of these games, I'm kind of using it as an excuse to add an additional game to my top games of this month, because I don't actually think this game is considered a small game to be featured in the herb garden, but it's fine. It's my channel, I get to do what I want. But the first one that I wanted to mention is in fact a card game, and that is a Sashi and Sashi card game called In Front of the Elevators. And this one is quite interesting and very enjoyable. I love the theme of this one. It is so funny. Basically, you are going to have cards in your hand. I think you have 2 or 3 cards in your hand at all times, and you're going to be playing cards into a line in front of 3 different elevators. Each of those elevators are going to have a certain amount of victory points at the end of the round based off of who is first, second, third, and sometimes fourth in the line in front of the elevator. And then also you're going to get bonus points based off the person or type of person that is in that spot. And each person is going to have a specific color, player color, and every player is going to be playing all player colors into these lines. So you could be playing another player's card into the line, and typically when you're playing another player's card, you're kind of trying to screw them over in a way. And every single card is going to be able to butt another specific card. So there's going to be the grandma and the grandpa. Always the grandma is going to be able to butt grandpas. And like I said, every character is going to be able to butt a specific character. And you're going to be playing out cards, drawing cards, and eventually once you are finished drawing those cards and playing out of the cards, whatever people are in those specific spots, you're going to get those victory points. And then additionally, I will say that if you ever have 3 of the same type in a row, so if you had 3 little girls in a row to the elevator or in a line to the elevator, those get taken away and discarded. So another way that you can kind of screw over other players. And yeah, just overall, such a wonderful little game. I love Sashi and Sashi as a publisher, and they always make some really great games. So I was not surprised that I enjoyed that one. So that is In Front of the Elevators. Moving into the next game, this is the one that I don't really consider as like a small game, but I did want to mention it. It didn't quite get into my top 5 big games, but it really did shine during the month, so I still wanted to mention it. And this is a game from Stefan Feld. It is an older game of his, and I am going to butcher the name of this game, but it's called the Spetterstraat. I think it's a very long word. This is a very fun, just like simple worker placement tableau building game where basically every player is going to have a bunch of different workers of their color, and then there's going to be cards placed out. And on your turn, you're simply just going to take one of your workers and place it above one of these different cards. And this is going to be you saying, I would like this card and I am willing to pay money, because you're going to have money that you're going to be paying for these cards. And based off of how many workers end up being in that line above that card is going to be how many coins that specific card is going to cost. So it's this very interesting game of like adding your workers above these cards to add more cost to these cards for other players. So eventually, once the game or round is finished and everyone has placed out their workers, if there's a card with 4 players lined up above it, the first player gets the choice to purchase that card for, let's say there were 4 people, 4 coins. If they don't want to do that, they take their worker away. The next player in line then has to pay 3 coins if they'd like that card. If they don't want it, take their worker away. Next player, 2 coins. Do you want it? Yes or no? Last player in line, if they manage to actually get to that spot, then they're able to purchase that card for 1 coin. So it's this very cool, thinky game of, do I want to add my worker there? And hopefully everyone passes. You can actually look to see how many coins each player has in order to like work out mentally, which I wasn't able to do this. I kind of just placed workers wherever I wanted to, but if you were really good at this game, you could kind of work out like, I'm going to place my worker here because I can see that this player's not going to be able to afford it, so they're going to have to be taken away. That player won't be able to afford it, or maybe doesn't want to afford it, so they'll probably take their worker away, and eventually it'll get to the end and I'll be able to get this card for 1 coin. So very cool. The cards are going to be like different resources that you're going to be able to gain. Some of them are going to be contracts that then you're going to be able to place the resources on in order to get victory points. Some of them are going to have different abilities that get you different things, ongoing abilities for the rounds. Some of them are going to be firefighters, which whenever a fire comes out, whoever has the most firefighters gains victory points based off of the round. And then whoever has the least amount of firefighters loses the amount of victory points based off of the round. So overall, such a cool game. Very unique for Stefan Feld. I am a huge fan of Stefan Feld, so I've always wanted to just play so many of his games and just experience a lot of his games. It was fun to be able to try the Speechenrestaurant. I am so sorry for butchering that name, but that is why I wanted to mention it here in the Herb Garden. All right, and the last game that I wanted to quickly mention here in the Herb Garden is a trivia game. And I typically don't love trivia games, but this has been one that I've really enjoyed, and a lot of people in my life have also enjoyed it. I played this with a group of friends. We also played this with my family, and everyone has really enjoyed it. And the game that I'm talking about is SDK or CDSK. I forget the exact order of the letters, but you guys will see a picture of it up here. But this is specifically like the smaller travel version of it. And this is a really cool trivia game where you get to determine how difficult the trivia is based off of how well you know a specific category. So whenever you move up, it is just like a move race to the end kind of game where you're going to be choosing a category on your first turn, and then based off of the level that you know, so you're going to have a topic and then you're going to be able to choose a number between 1 and 10 based off of how well you know that specific topic. And then if you are able to get that trivia question correct, you're going to move that many spaces based off of the number. So if I picked 4, we got it correct, we would move up 4 spaces, and then based off of where you landed, that would be your next category for the next round. Overall, this has proved to be a trivia game that is more friendly to people than past trivia games. I've always just been intimidated by trivia games because most of the time it's asking questions that I just have no idea what the answer is. So this being a more like intro friendly way to play a trivia game has been really nice, and I've really enjoyed it. So that is why I wanted to mention CDSK. I think that's it. All right, moving into my top 5 games for the month of October, starting with number 5, which this is a game that I think I've said this before, but I definitely have like a love-hate relationship with this game. But the more that I play this game, the more that I fall in love with it. And that is Brass Birmingham, which this is obviously the #1 game on Board Game Geek, and it is truly a fantastic game. I don't know if it is like, you know, #1 on BGG type fantastic for me personally, but I still really enjoy this game. And like I said, the more that I play it, the more that I grasp the rules for this game and the more I enjoy it. I've always kind of gotten confused with the connection rules and stuff, but the past game that I played of this, I fully just like kind of grasped the rules on those connections. and was able to play the game without kind of like overthinking the connections and really being able to strategize, which I found to be very, very nice. So I did end up, I think when I played this as well, I ended up winning, which made me feel really good. And yeah, overall, such a fantastic game. And moving forward, I do think that this will be one that I would love to play more and more, and, you know, become possibly one of those games that I start to kind of try to master in a way. Francis also does really enjoy this one, so I'd love to play it more with him as well. But yes, that is my number 5 for October, Brass Birmingham. Moving on to number 4, this is a game that I've talked about quite a few times. It is Federation, which I have said this so many times, but Federation needs more love. This game is so fantastic. More people need to play it. I love this game so much. There is something about the worker placement in this game that I love. I did actually recently do my top 10 worker placement games, and Federation was on that list. If you want to go and check that out, I will put it up here if I can remember. But yeah, there's something about the worker placement in this game that I just find to be so fun, because there is so many things that you have to think about when you're placing down a worker. Typically in a worker placement game, there's not a ton that you have to think about when it comes to just placing down that worker. Typically it's just a one avenue thought process of where do I want to go in order to do this action. Whereas in Federation, there's so many things that you have to think about. Not only where I want to place to do a specific action, but also where do I want to place in order to cast a vote? Which side of the worker do I want to place in order to either cast a vote or to, you know, go up on that specific column's track? What row do I want to go in order to possibly get victory points for majority in that row? What column do I want to go in order to go up that one track? Just so many things to think about when it just comes to that worker placement. And I just think it is so fun. Again, kind of itches my brain in a way that I just love. And overall, Federation is so good. I cannot wait to try out the Piracy expansion, I think is what it's called. It is a new expansion that got released at Essen. One of my most anticipated of Essen. But yeah, one, it adds in some different modules for Federation, but then also it adds in a solo mode for Federation, which is something I've been waiting for. So yes, so excited for the Piracy expansion for Federation, and overall, Federation's fantastic, and that is why it is my number 4 for October. All right, moving into my number 3. This is a game that is similar to another game that I've already mentioned, and that is Ark Nova. But the game that I'm talking about is Sanctuary, which is the new kind of version of Ark Nova. It's a more approachable tile placement version of Ark Nova. I do believe that it is on pre-order right now on the Capstone website. I could be wrong, but it is releasing to retail, and it is wonderful. I really, really enjoyed this when I played it. I will say I've only played it once thus far, but my first play of it, I loved it. I love the small similarities between Ark Nova and Sanctuary. I love, again, it's using the same kind of conveyor belt card, which in this game they're technically tiles, but kind of that action system that Ark Nova has, Sanctuary has as well. And overall, it kind of does simplify the gameplay. You are building up your zoo map by placing out tiles. On your turn, you're always going to be drafting one tile. You do have these like little things that you can like place your tiles in, which is kind of nice to always have your tiles facing you. There are a bunch of different types of tiles. There's the animal tiles. There's also building tiles that are going to need specific things before you can place them down, just like adjacency and stuff. There's also project tiles that are going to get you endgame stuff and ongoing things. I will also mention that there are the same kind of conservation objectives as well, which I've really enjoyed. In this game, instead of like Ark Nova having 3 different conservation objectives, you're going to have 5 different ones, and each player is going to have a specific amount of tiles that you're going to be able to place out. And one of the endgame triggers for Sanctuary is if you place out all 4 of your tiles, that will trigger the end of the game. And it's basically having 2 of one of those conservation projects, 3 of one of those conservation projects. I think there's 2 3s and then there's a 4 of a conservation project. It might actually be 2, 3, 4, and 5. I could be wrong, but basically you're going to be placing out those tiles as you achieve those different objectives, and then the game will end if one person has placed out all 4 of those tiles. But overall, I just love the way that it plays. I'm a huge fan of tile placement games, so if you give me Ark Nova in a tile placement game, I'm most likely going to enjoy it. I really enjoyed my first play of it, and that is why it is my number 3 for October. All right, moving into my number 2. This is one that is, I believe, like a follow-up game to another game that I really enjoy. And the game that I'm talking about is El Burro, which I believe is a follow-up game to La Granja, which I love. La Granja, you guys will most likely see that game in my top games. It's one that has shot up there. Freaking love that game. I love the multi-use cards in La Granja, and in El Burro there is very similar kind of gameplay. It actually plays very similar to La Granja, so I don't know if I would ever get El Burro into my collection if I already have La Granja, which I do. I like managed to find a fancy master version of it at a bring and buy. But yes, El Burro, like I said, kind of plays similarly to La Granja, but there's some small differences in some of the things. So on the main board in La Granja, you have this central area, which is a little bit of like a area majority kind of area control-ish kind of thing, which I don't love in La Granja. And one thing that they changed in El Burro is the fact that you don't have that middle area on the board anymore. You actually have these like donkey tracks, which is kind of fun. In La Granja with this, you are going to be unlocking these different buildings, but in El Burro, you're going to be unlocking the buildings as you move up this donkey track, and you're going to be able to move your 2 donkeys, and you're going to be able to trigger these different things and unlock these different buildings that then you're going to be able to place out your goods as you move these donkeys up. Whether you have one of your donkeys reach that location or both of your donkeys reaching that location, eventually as you get to the end of that, you're going to be able to unlock a ship that you can get victory points for as well. And I do really like the change in that. Overall, really loved the differences with El Burro. I really enjoyed my play of it, but I don't know if it's quite enough for me to, put in the effort to sell my copy of La Granja and seek out a copy of El Burro. I think I'm good with my copy of La Granja, and I really still enjoy La Granja, so I'm happy with that. But obviously I really enjoyed El Burro because it is my number 2 for October. And then moving into my number 1 game for the month of October. This game really shocked me, but honestly, the type of game it is, I'm actually not that surprised that I enjoyed this so much. But my number 1 game for October is a game called Shallow Sea. I loved this game so much. I've played it twice thus far. Once, actually the second play, we played with the expansion as well. This is such a good game. If you love games like Calico, Cascadia, Harmonies, all of those just like drafting, tile placement, puzzly games, definitely get your hands on a copy of Shallow Sea because it is so good. So fantastic. You are going to be drafting a tile and a fish from a column, and there's 2 different types of tiles. There's going to be the reef tiles as well as the wildlife tiles, and then you have the row of fish in between those 2 rows of tiles, and you're going to be drafting one of the 2 tiles in that column as well as the fish, and then you're going to be placing that tile out. You're going to be placing the fish in like a spot beside the tiles. Each tile is going to have like an up, down, left, right spot. Some of the tiles only require 2 colors, in the north, south, east, and west. Some of it requires just 3 of them. Some of it requires all 4 surrounding spots. But basically you're going to be matching the color of fish with the up, down, left, right kind of spot of each of those tiles depending on the tile. And then once you have the fish surrounding that tile that are matching the colors, you're going to be able to flip over that reef tile, and then you're going to be able to place one of those fish on top of the tile to kind of sacrifice that fish, because You also have these shells that you can use in order to move the fish to kind of maximize the use of each of the colored fish to flip over these tiles. Additionally, you have the wildlife tiles, which are going to be objectives, kind of similar in a way to Calico, where you're needing specific things kind of in the rows and columns adjacent to that animal tile or things surrounding that tile. And then once you have achieved that objective, you're going to flip over that animal tile. And whenever you flip over a reef or animal tile, you're going to be able to gain an additional shell, which again, like I said, you can use those shells kind of like nature tokens in a way in Cascadia, where you can use one to kind of wipe either the fish row or one of the tile rows and get new ones out. Or you can use 2 shells in order to move a fish to a different location in order to, like I said, maximize the use of those different fish for different tiles. If those wildlife objective tiles were not enough, there's additionally like public objectives that you're going for. In the expansion, there's even more objectives that you're going for as well. You have these like turtles that you're going to be placing onto objectives. It's kind of like timed objectives for those, where whoever completes a specific objective first gets to place out their turtle and get the most victory points, then the second most, then the third most, so on and so forth. And overall, this game is so good. I need to find myself a copy of this one. Yeah, so good, and that is why it is my #1 for October. Alright friends, so that is going to be everything for today's video. Those are my board game stats and some of my favorite games for the last 2 months of September and October. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. Also hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. We are at 34.9 thousand subscribers, so we are this close to getting to 35,000. So definitely hit that subscribe button, join the garden if you want to. Be sure to comment down below as well some of your favorite games that you've played recently within the last few months. I'd love to know that. I love you guys so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye friends!